but he'll just jump in here. So, all right, well, it's 9 o'clock. Thank you all for joining in. Can everyone hear a little more clear today than they could yesterday? Okay, I think I solved it on my end. I'm actually going to get a good microphone this week, and then it'll be even better. But so you guys have you all had at least one class already? So how's that going, like with the classes that have a lot of students?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. Not bad.
We all stay muted the whole time, so we don't talk a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sit there in odd silence.
Yeah. Yeah. And then are any of you, honestly, you don't have to say yes. Just look up at the ceiling if you've been tempted to watch Netflix with subtitles during the lectures.
What if we've been tempted to do something else?
I don't have
We still have to look it up.
Netflix.
Oh, you don't have Netflix. Disney Plus.
No. I do have Disney Plus. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. All right. Well,
That would probably break my router.
So I've been thinking about how to make this a little more engaging, and we're going to come up with more and more things as we go. One thing is I can use my hands a lot, more than I ever realized. So that's kind of weird. But I think what we're going to do is we'll do regular class, but we will sometimes, I'm going to break you up into small groups, and you can. Is someone's mom in the background?
Yeah, that would, yeah.
It's okay. But what we'll do is I might break you into some small groups so that you can have, it's easier to have like a 2 or 3-way conversation than it is to have the whole Brady Bunch thing. So we will do this as well, but I'll try and break you up into some small groups, work on projects. So, so stay tuned about that. We will do these reading summaries every time we have this class, just to kind of kick us off, keep everyone engaged. And then today what we're going to do is we're going to do the reading summary. Alyssa's going to lead that. And then I have a scenario I'll put up on the shared page so you can read it. And then we're going to go around and talk about our opinion of the scenario. Okay? Everyone good? Okay, I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to have Alyssa go ahead and do our reading summary, chapter 14.
Okay, did everybody get numbers from me, or a number? Everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so if I like say your number, I already forgot who has what, so y'all need to remember for me. But if I say your number, can y'all answer, like, because I have some questions about the reading. So, numbers 4 and 9. Does everybody have 4 and 9? Okay. Can y'all give one thing that stood out to you from today's reading?
Hey, just for, if you're not the one answering, mute your microphone just so we don't get too much extra.
So I'll do 4 first and then 9, whoever had 4 and 9. Anybody have 4?
There we go.
Dylan.
Okay. So what was the question? What, something that stood out, or?
Yeah.
I think something that stood out was there was a lot more categories to people's roles and like their personality and behavior types. I thought there was only a couple, like the 4 that we had learned with our that we had gotten from our personality tests or whatever, but then this one kind of like expanded out and like showed a lot more details and like a lot more categories, which I thought was cool.
9.
I appreciated the diversity, like in personality. Not everyone should be the same type of leader or have the same role in a team. And yeah, I appreciated that we can all be different and still work together and accomplish something.
That actually, like, both of those actually kind of fit with what we're going to get into, like, in a few minutes, so that was great. Number 7, can you just briefly explain what's the difference between a functional role and the team role in a project?
Functional role and team role. Here, I'm gonna use a little cheat sheet.
That's fine.
So I know that when it was going over the team roles, like the summary of team roles, it was listing out all the different types, like controlling and organizing, down to
Mhm.
communicator and collaborator. First of all, I thought that was kind of a list of attributes that one person could hold, because I know that it's been kind of interesting. I've known people who kind of hit every single one of these in a different way or another. But I think the difference between the team roles is that on a team, you need to hold, there needs to be like there needs to be a person to fill the slot. So if there's communication and collaboration that needs to be done, one person needs to kind of take charge of that set of skills or that set of responsibilities and be that point person for that. So I think the difference is it's just more specific. It has to do a little bit more with something to lock down onto and kind of just become the point person for. You take charge over that one thing, and then that becomes your main responsibility.
That's great. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to that? Or no? Yes. Okay. So kind of going off of what Jared was saying and kind of what you guys both mentioned, I know the book gave a couple examples of like what a team role would look like when it was talking about like controlling or challenging or creative, that kind of stuff. So could I have 2 and 8? Can you give me what you think like in any given project, what your specific team role might be?
As far as like, it's kind of hard. Depending on what the job would be, if it's something I'm familiar with, I'm kind of the guy that would just step in and take charge and, I don't know, dictate out other roles, especially if I'm passionate or I know what's going on, or if it's something that I love. It's easier for me to teach. But yeah, I definitely have to. I'll add a little on to what Jared had to say. Actually, we've said there can be too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and I think it's very important that if there's a job where there's a bunch of tasks that need to be done, where there's a lot of roles that are very familiar or very similar in nature, I think it's very important if you're doing something like that, that every single person involved knows exactly what task or what their job is and what is expected of them, and their just the level of work that each team member is assigned. I think there needs to be extreme clarity there, especially if the jobs are close. So that way it eliminates any stress.
I think personally I'd be like a contributor or developer, because like I'm not really the type of person that has a personality that would like take over and be in charge and everything like that. But I personally am very motivated to like get everything done and get the job done correctly and in the right way. So I think I would be more of the person that would keep the project moving and making sure that everything's going, rather than like the like head honcho, the one that does like all of the organizing, everything like that.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. Okay. Okay, this one's a little, could I have, okay, number 10, what are some ways that a different team role could be important? So like if there was a problem, maybe come up with like a problem that could happen maybe in your work, and what would some ways that everybody having different things to contribute, how could that be important to maybe a problem that comes up in work?
Okay, well, if you had,
I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, no, it does. Basically, building on what the guys already said about too many chiefs, not enough Indians. when I went to the Airman Leadership School Academy in the military, we were all studying to be leaders, but they would put us on these projects where only one person can actually be the, as the book would call it, controller organizer. So we had to all kind of submit our roles within our roles within the team. So one person had to be the person that took notes and collected all the information, and 2 or 3 people had to be the ones that were hands-on on the project scenario. Only one person could be calling the shots. And I think that's the way they were teaching us, that because that's the way life works. I mean, you have to have a diversity. I mean, even when you look at scripture, the Bible says in 1 Corinthians, I think it's 12, about how even the church, the body, is made up of all these different parts, and each part is equally valuable, and each part needs to be comfortable with the role that they are, and Paul says, hey, a hand cannot be an eye, and an eye cannot be a hand. You have to find what your role is and be okay with that. Doesn't mean that you don't change over time or that you don't grow and have a desire to do something different. But while you're within a team, your role of controlling and organizing, or challenging, assessing, or being the creative person, or being the contributor, or being the communicator, I mean, each of those have a great value. And I think every workplace has to have a diversity of that. You cannot have all the people be in the same team role, or else you'll have chaos and something important won't get done.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, I had the next question. Can we have 3 and 1? Why is it necessary to strive to understand and respect team members' roles during a project? So kind of off of what the guys were saying, every team should have a diversity in types of personalities or differences. So why is it important for either you as a manager or just another team member to try to understand the people around you and their personalities or their strengths and their weaknesses? Why is that important to contribute to a team setting?
Well, understanding how people work, it brings about unity within the team, and understanding where people are emotionally, what their personalities are. It helps bring out the best in the other person, which helps them contribute to the project better. And as far as understanding people's roles, it helps bring more of a sense of order, and it causes less confusion when people know what they're doing, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, and the types of things that they should be fulfilling.
I would say it's important to recognize what people's roles are and be aware of that, because if a problem comes up, you may not be the one who is best equipped to solve that problem. And when you recognize that I'm not the person to do that, but this guy is, then you can work more efficiently as a team and say, hey, this is your strong suit, you can take care of this. And you work together as a team better when you say, it kind of takes the pride aspect out of it. Like, hey, this isn't my area of expertise, but this is yours, and you work better as a team together.
Yeah, I like what you said about it kind of takes away the pride aspect, because you're acknowledging that you don't have everything, you're not equipped with everything to be able to do that job. So you need other people, and you need to be able to rely on other people. Okay, and then 5 and 6. So one of the things that the book mentioned that I thought was really interesting was that that team roles in a project, they help balance a team, or they help kind of bring out how balanced the team is or isn't. So I guess number 5, what do you think that means, and what would that look like? And then for number 6, why would that be important?
I think what
to understand
looks like like if you don't understand the roles and like which person works which way, then your project's just going to kind of like crash and burn. Whereas if like you as a leader actually take the time to understand like, okay, this person works this way and like works best doing this thing, then your team will work better, I guess, if as a leader you understand everybody instead of just kind of throwing people wherever you think they would be most useful instead of where they would actually be most useful.
Yeah, it's definitely important for like a worker or an employee to know his role and what he or she can or can't do. It's also important for the manager or leader in charge to recognize what their role is and put them in a position for that individual to be successful and for the whole team and group to be successful as well.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing kind of that I noticed kind of circling through and back with the different things that everybody said, for team roles, it's really important to recognize that there does need to be a difference. There can't just be like one person that's really good at this and everybody else is good at the same thing. We need to have a balance of different personalities and different strengths and weaknesses. And then also a level of respect needs to come with it as well in order to produce a good product or goal or whatever it is that you're working on at the time. So that's what I had.
Alyssa, thank you very much. Very good job. I think you did great and made my job easy. Let me just take all that you guys talked about and just kind of read you the summary that the book has. The benefits of having a well-constructed team, right? So this is pretty intuitive, so you guys could come up with this on your own, but fewer clashes between individuals competing for the same team role. So when you have a well-constructed team where people understand what their role is as a team role and what their functional role is, then you're going to have less people thinking, oh, I thought that was my job. Oh, how come they're doing this? I thought I was in charge of that. Number two, more mutual appreciation and recognition between team members, because if everyone compares themselves to everyone else, and if you say, well, I am now the yardstick that everyone else is going to be measured by, well, first off, that's proud and it's foolish, as the Bible says, but you're not going to have any mutual appreciation. But when you understand that each person in the team carries a team role and a functional role, then yeah, you might be the person working at the front counter, but you'll appreciate the person working in the back office a lot more when you understand. You're like, okay, they don't have to be like me. They don't have to think like me. They don't have to have the same gifts as me, but they have a valuable role on this team. Matter of fact, we couldn't do it without them. And every organization is wired that way. A greater contribution to the whole team from each team member. So when people are placed in the right positions and they understand their role and they understand their function, then when they're inside the team, the whole team's going to do better because everyone's in their best spot. And then finally, avoidance of mistakes when one team member undertakes an activity and that demands multiple team roles. So sometimes you have to wear more than one hat. Well, if you understand why that's happening and you do your best to work around it, you have less chance of messing things up. And I think one of the things that you're going to experience, as I've experienced many times, is it's hard when you go from being on one team and you had a certain role, team role, and you had a certain function, and then you go to a new team and you might go in with the understanding that you have the same function, but what you don't understand is what your team role is. So before, you were the decision maker, you were the controller, organizer, and now you're the communicator. Well, that can be pretty disruptive because you feel like, boy, I was so successful at my last job. This is the same job, but I'm not getting to do the same thing. Well, it can cause a lot of frustration. That's why when you go to like a job interview, you have to ask a lot of questions. It's a two-way relationship. You want to know what your role is going to be within the team, not just functionally. Okay. So yes, I am working in the, customer service department, and my day-to-day job is to answer the phone and deal with problems and, enter certain information on the computer. That's your functional role. Okay. But your team role, okay, are you the leader of a small group of people that do this? Are you the one that when you go to the weekly customer service roundtable meeting, that you're the one bringing the reports? Are you the one that brings information from the manager back to the team? You kind of need to know what your role is as a team. So really important, and it'll save you a lot of frustration if at least you're aware of what this is like, because when you get out there and you start working somewhere, because you're going to be a 20-plus-year-old former college student with some experience in leadership, it will not take long before you are placed into roles that are bigger than just being an entry-level Chick-fil-A worker or an entry-level Hy-Vee cashier. You're going to be placed into positions where they're going to expect you to lead. And so the more you understand about this stuff, even you don't have to have all this memorized. You might never go back and talk about functional roles and team roles, but I think it's going to help you to understand your place in the working world, whether that's in ministry or whether that's in a secular environment. You're going to understand this better. And you need to expect that you are going to be leading at some point, even if that's not your desire. You shouldn't be out there just itching to be the top person. Matter of fact, I just finished a book. It's really good. If you're looking for a good audio book, really interesting, called The Motive. And it's all about it's a story. It's Patrick Lencioni. I think one or two of you might be reading a Patrick Lencioni book right now. But the whole idea is every CEO, okay, every president of every organization, even senior pastors, should ask themselves this question: why do I want to be the top leader? And it's a good question. Now, we all say, servant leadership, and we want to bring God glory. And so all of that, we understand as a Christian, that's what we're supposed to say. But in reality, why do you want to be that leader? And his point in the book, and this guy's not a Christian, he's a Mormon. He says, if the answer to that question is anything other, I want to be able to help more people by being in this role, then our motive is a little bit off and we need to check it. And the point he brings up is that in America, especially those of us that have any kind of either experience in the military, or maybe your family member has worked in a situation where there was a union or something like that, we expect that promotion is a reward for hard work. And eventually, if you kind of keep working that promotion, you're eventually going to get to the top of the pyramid. And the top of the pyramid is that president, CEO, senior pastor, team captain position. And that a lot of us misunderstand that the top pyramid person gets to do the stuff that they like, and they delegate the stuff they don't like. That is a misunderstanding of the leadership role at the top. And after you've been out for a while, you maybe already been experienced in this, you'll see people that think that is exactly why they're at the top. And that type of short-sightedness, what they do is they focus on the things they like, they delegate the things they don't like. But what they don't understand is there are things that only that top person can do, right? That no one else can do, whether they like it or not. They have to do certain things that only a CEO can do. So it's really interesting to understand where you fit in that pyramid, so to speak, but that to understand and get out of your brain that rising to the level of leadership is not to be looked at as a reward for years of hard work. I mean, promotion does happen. That's the way we move up. We get promoted. But even in Proverbs, it says promotion comes from the Lord. It doesn't come from the east or the west. So as we move up in leadership responsibilities, we have to keep ourselves in check, that we have the right motive for that role we carry in the team. So That being said, now I'm going to share something. Let's see if we can work. We're going to do a little scenario. So great job, Alyssa. Let me see if I can get this to work. Share. Let's see here. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Share screen. Here we go. And boom. Share. Okay. Can you guys see this scenario here? Yes? Okay. So I'll just read it just in case you're like on your phone or you're on audio only right now. So I created a scenario and we're going to go all around the class and discuss this. So the scenario, notice if for those of you that are watching, I have a picture of a hipster coffee shop there. I literally Googled hipster coffee shop and this is the image it came up with. This is the only image that didn't have a bunch of guys with long beards and tattoos. So it says, you are an organizational analyst hired by the Bank of Iowa to go in and evaluate the staff that work for a local coffee shop. The shop, Grounds for Divorce, I've never been to a coffee shop named that, but Grounds for Divorce is owned by a couple named Phil and Philomena Fuller. And here are some of the basics of the company. So to understand kind of a general overview of the company, last year they did just under $1 million in gross sales, which is a pretty decent for a three location coffee shop. 3 locations in the tri-state area. Jared Ball, Phineas and Ferb, tri-state area, right? They have 30 full-time and part-time employees, about 10 per store. They have booming retail section in all 3 locations, selling branded gear, fresh roasted coffee, and coffee accessories. So it's not just coffee shop. They also have a little retail section that seems to sell a lot. Before you even arrive to go analyze their team, you already know you're going to be looking for certain functional and team roles. So right out of the book, a functional role refers to the job the team has been hired to do and members have been selected for their product knowledge, their technical skill, their work experience, practical ability in a particular area. So that's their functional role. And then a team role, members also fulfill a team role, which is their tendency to behave in a particular way to contribute to the team's effectiveness through their interrelationships with other team members. So here are the questions I'm going to ask you, and I'm just going to kind of bounce around, okay? I'd like everyone to come up with, and you cannot repeat someone else's, what would be a functional role that you would expect to see in a business like this? What does that role do for the company? So there's a small business like this, even from your understanding how businesses work, all businesses have certain jobs. So what would be a functional role that a business like this would have? And I'll start at the top with Dylan.
I think one of the main things is customer service. So putting the customers first.
Yeah. So you actually have people that at least part of their job is focusing on customer service. All right. Okay, Max.
Sorry.
That's right.
A functional role, I would say, like a head of marketing or product things, because like I said, they have a lot of products that they sell.
Yep.
So like sweatshirts and coffee mugs and all that. So someone in charge of their marketing and sales and stuff.
Yep. All right, great. David.
Well, Max totally stole mine, but people who know about coffee and what's good, what's not good, particular blends and stuff.
What would you call someone that is the coffee expert at a coffee shop?
A connoisseur?
No, it's an Italian word.
That's not.
Would be a barista.
A barista, yes, a barista. That's the person that's the expert of making a coffee. How many of you worked at a coffee shop?
Dang.
Okay, yeah. So Emmy, David. All right. Okay, thank you, David. Katie.
You'd need somebody who's like in charge of like the team members, just kind of like a head manager person to keep track, like the schedule, kind of like the day-to-day operations lead person.
Yep. So probably in a business of 30, they would probably call that a general manager. So, and they, or some, they might call it a regional manager if they expanded beyond the tri-state area, but since they're in one area, I'd probably call it a general manager. Okay. And they're in charge of people stuff. Noah.
Definitely diligence and discipline, because like if you look at the picture, I know it's just a sample, but you want to keep it clean and tidy as much as you can, and you want to have a good attitude about that, even though it's easy to have not so good one. And then when people see that the diligence, they say, "Wow, that's a good worker." They know how to train their employees, and they know how to get stuff done.
Yep. So what Noah and Dylan have touched on is there are certain functional roles that are more based on a philosophy or a concept, and then everyone else has mentioned a technically functional role, which is an actual specific job. So, and they're both true. Okay, birthday boy, JB number 2.
Would you like to hear my answer 3000?
Yes.
Okay. Noah got a little close to it, but I'm thinking like somebody who's in charge of the design of the interior, kind of the feng shui, because coffee shops, especially hipster coffee shops, are really big on that.
Absolutely. I mean, even this picture, right? So you could buy coffee at Casey's. I mean, it's not really coffee, but it smells like coffee kind of. But people will spend 5 times as much to go to this place. Have any of you ever been to Greenville, by the way? Anyone here been to Greenville? Anyone? Anyone?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
There's a coffee shop in downtown Greenville called Methodical Coffee. Unbelievable. Looks just like this place. Anyway, right. Interior design. I mean, it's the aesthetics. If last semester we had Mark Weatherly speaking class, he talked about aesthetics are part of what we do. So, okay, Emmy, what else?
I would say someone that's in charge of the accounts there, because you have to have someone that's managing the money and everything like that to make sure that you're getting a revenue in. And then also, if they need to purchase, a new like coffee grinder, new espresso machine, they have to make sure they have the money for that first. And then also like how expensive or how cheap or of a product that you have to buy in order to get it. And then just the basic, like getting coffee, getting milk, creamer, and just the different syrups. Like you have to have someone that's in charge of making sure that can all be purchased rather than everyone like going broke.
Yep. So, and this is when you have a business that has 30 employees in 3 different locations, the general manager cannot be the one making decisions about where to buy the coffee beans and how many cups do they, what are they paying per cup and things like that. So you have to have a money person. Some organizations would say that's the business manager or the CFO. Some would just say that's the accountant or the accounting person. And then when accounting departments get bigger, they kind of start breaking down into more jobs within the accounting department. Great. Okay. Caleb.
That always sucks being at the end because J-Rad totally just stole my idea. But if I was going to run this company or something, with my 3 locations, I would maybe push to like maybe branch outside, maybe like a patio, or if there's landscaping outside. I think when people are driving by, I think it's very important to make your coffee shop different or your business different. So if they roll by and there's really neat lighting outside, it's a little enclosed patio where you can watch the sun come up and enjoy your coffee and your breakfast outside or anything like that. I think it's very important to have a very clean, unique kind of a draw in. I think that would be very important to have the outside very well upkept and just design it so it catches the customer and it's very inviting and it's a very comfortable atmosphere to relax and be outside, because you're inside working behind a desk all day. So if you've got a location where you can do a porch or patio option and watch the sun come up while you're enjoying your breakfast, that could be an option.
Yeah, you're making
So,
me
just-
hungry right now, actually, by saying all that. Thank you. So in those things, although that might not fall on any one person, it might be actually the people that own it make those decisions. But that stuff doesn't happen by accident, right? So you're not going to have that environment even 2 days in a row unless someone, as we say in business, keeps their eye on that ball, right? So that is a role. It could be delegated down to different people, but it is a role within the team. Alyssa.
Um, I was thinking like you would probably need a marketing director of some sort, especially if you're gonna have more than one coffee shop. Like if it's gonna start being a chain or something, you'd need somebody in charge of getting people to know about it and know what it's for. Like, maybe like promotions that you're gonna be doing or special events that you're gonna be hosting or something, just so that people actually know that you exist, as opposed to just kind of hoping that people just walk in the door and spread by word of mouth. You probably would need somebody that's in charge of organizing things to help people know that you're there and boost publicity a little bit.
Yep. So I think it was Max or someone had talked about product development. This is a whole nother aspect, because when you talk about the role of a small business in a community, what a lot of businesses now do is they have someone that's dedicated to what they call community engagement. So a coffee shop, especially, coffee shop can be used, you can rent it out for events. You can, host the Chamber of Commerce meetings. You can get people to come in for special promotions, all kinds of things. And so, but no one in the community knows that unless someone goes out and tells them. And so a few of you might have went with me to that chiropractor's office last semester, and he has someone on his team. So it's a chiropractor's office, but they have someone that their title is community engagement, because they know if they don't get out in the community, they're just one of 100 chiropractors in Ankeny. So they get out into the community and they create a relationship, and that's a critical part of running a small business. So Krista, I'm sorry, you're the last one. So you've had so many, but you've had the most time to think about it as everyone keeps checking off all your ideas. What do you think?
Well, it may kind of go along with what you were saying, but someone who like keeps in mind the vision of the company, and like maybe they look for a certain type of person to hire, or they keep in touch with their customers and what their customers would want, and like in their in the coffee part of it, or in their the gear that they're selling. Someone who just doesn't lose sight of the big picture, and kind of helps everyone to keep focused on their vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just like any other job, right? So if you don't assign someone to clean the bathrooms, they're not going to clean themselves. So yet so many small businesses and even ministries stop focusing on other things that are just as important or more important to the mission, which is someone's got to keep an eye on the vision. Someone has to keep going back to it. And Krista brought up an important part. Who's doing the hiring? Are you making sure you're hiring people that align with those values? So very good. Alyssa.
I was just thinking, it also kind of depends on how big your company is too. So, I mean, this one you probably wouldn't have as many, but I know like when I worked at Cracker Barrel, we had like 4 different managers in the building, but then we also have like our district manager, and then we have 2 district managers as well. So they had like a general manager who's over the restaurant itself, and then we had a training manager and a restaurant manager and a retail manager, and they oversee different aspects. And then we also had a district manager who's in charge of the restaurant and one who's in charge of retail. And it's like that, like I know at Chick-fil-A too, we have a few different types of managers. So I think also depending on how big your company is, you might have a number of managers and a different management team in order to take some of the pressure off of just one person having to do everything. And also you have that level of accountability there.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. So let me ask you all a question, and maybe you can just jump in as long as you're not cutting someone else off. But so, how many people does a business like this need to have in order to have managers? And why do you think that is? Like, how many people need to be working somewhere before someone's called the manager? Alyssa? Or is your hand still up from before?
But it's probably just up from before.
Oh, I got to dismiss.
How do I take it off?
I don't know. Maybe, I lowered
Unraised
your
hand.
I lowered your hand.
Oh, okay.
Is this a trick question that you're asking?
I don't know. Is it?
I think it
I
is.
can
I
answer.
think the
I have a
answer is
thought.
1.
1? Why do you say
Oh,
that?
I was gonna say at least 2.
Nope, 1. Because that sounds like the best trick question to answer. And probably if you've got a company or something like this, there's always going to be a manager position, even if you're doing it by yourself. But you're just managing operations by yourself. So I'm going to say 1.
Dylan, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask, didn't earlier this year you talk about how there's like a 3 to 4 man like limit for what a manager can effectively like manage?
Wow, I cannot believe that you remember anything I've said. So thank you very much. You can take the rest of the week off. Yes, absolutely. Scientifically, they've proven that you can effectively manage just a few people. So that is true. But do you have to have additional employees before you start calling someone a manager? It is a little bit of a trick question, because is a manager managing if there's no one to manage? You know, that's kind of where Alyssa's at. You got to at least have one other person to manage. So that is true. If you're self-employed, you know, you could call yourself the Supreme Allied Commander, I guess, and be like, hey, you know, call me sir. And who's going to call you sir? There's an old Japanese proverb that says, a leader with no followers is just a man taking a walk in his backyard, or something like that. It's very deep, but it just means basically, so you do have to be leading someone. On the other hand, where Jared's at is kind of where I'm going. Let's say that you go out and you start something. Let's say that you go out and you start a coffee shop, or a cleaning business, or a tutoring company, or a CPR instruction business. You're not starting that hoping that you're the only person that's ever going to work there, unless it's just like a side hustle for you. You just want to make a little money doing it yourself. But most people, if you're doing something and you're trying to make it really great, you're expecting that it's going to grow. And so the expectation of growth should also be the expectation of management. So the book I finished last year on management, they talk about in the earliest days of a company, you should go ahead and outline all the different positions of leadership that will exist in the company. A CFO, a CEO, someone that's in charge of logistics, someone that's in charge of purchasing, things like that, someone that's in charge of training. Now, it might just be you and your brother-in-law starting this business, or you and your sister-in-law, but you go ahead and have those titles. And then as the business is blessed and it grows, now you're starting to fill those titles. And you cannot make everyone a manager, because you know that there's an expectation of managers. If you call someone a manager, you have to pay them what managers get paid, right? No one is impressed by saying, oh, thank you for calling me a manager. I'm a minimum wage manager. Well, managers get paid more because they're expected to handle more stress. They have to deal with additional things that just an entry-level worker that might not even buy into the vision of the organization. So managers, before you call someone a manager, you need to clearly identify what that actually means for them. So you all are touching on the different pieces of where I was going with that. So I want to take the last minute. I'll just talk about this last one. So within a team, you also have these team roles, right? So not only the functional roles, the baristas and the general manager and the person that's in charge of the vision and things, but you also have these roles that Alyssa was talking about: the controlling, organizing person, the challenging and assessing person, the creative, exploring person, contributor, developer person, communicator, collaborator person. Within this coffee shop context, you could be a barista, but you could also be the person that is constantly challenging and assessing the coffee shop, right? So your job, your day job, is to make coffee really well. But your role within the team is, hey, I'm going to constantly be asking questions to make sure our quality is improving. If you might be the person that is the maintenance person, no one mentioned that, but someone's got to maintain everything, keep everything working. And Caleb kind of touched on, someone's got to keep the aesthetics, the landscaping and stuff. Well, that person, their job is to shovel snow and wash the windows and fix the espresso machine. But their team role might be that they're the creative person. So they're constantly looking for ways to make the place more beautiful and engage people as they walk by. And to give that aesthetic appearance. The general manager, their job is to fill out the time schedule and make sure everyone's trained on what they need to be trained on. But they might also be the communicator, collaborator, where they're also trying to bring all the 3 different stores together to make sure they're all on the same page. So as you go through this, you'll see these play out. If you're currently working somewhere, you've recently worked somewhere, you can kind of see how these things work out. And trying to break up that there are 2 different things we're talking about when we talk about roles. You have kind of this technical role, which we call functional role. And then you have this, you could call it almost like a spiritual role or an internal role. It's not something that necessarily is clearly defined on the job description. Sometimes it is, but it's not something that people are necessarily paid to do. It has more to do with what the needs of the team are and where these people's giftedness are. And so you'll find yourself carrying a functional role, but maybe carrying this other team role that you didn't really know you were going to carry. And sometimes that can be a great blessing. Sometimes it can be a great frustration. So with that, good job. Great discussion. I think this was relatively successful. We'll try and make it even better. But I do want to tell you, I'm going to start assigning book report dates. If any of you are close to being done and you want to volunteer to get it out of the way, the good thing is you're kind of the guinea pig. And so you might get a little more grace, because once one person comes in and they just like knock it out of the park, then everyone else is going to have to do it at least that good. So you want to get in there and kind of get it done. If you're close to being done with your book, you should just message me and I'll put you on the schedule. What I'm expecting is, first off, it's much bigger than a reading summary just by the assignment. It's like 8 to 10 paragraphs or whatever. I just want to make sure that you read the book and that, you got it down. But then you need to help us as a class appreciate the book, right? So it's got to be more than just you saying, here are the 10 points from the book, and here's what he said, and here's 3 quotes. It's got to be something that's going to engage us a little bit. So that could be that you have maybe there's 1 or 2 things in the book that were visual, like a chart or a graph or something that was really interesting. Or there might be a story and you could show a picture of that story, whatever. Use your share screen. You can do it a lot of different ways, but I want you to kind of take it up a notch. So the writing portion of it and the quality of the writing is the majority of the grade, but that last little piece of the grade is you presenting this to the rest of the class. Okay, so no pressure, but pressure. Okay, and then finally, actually, I think that's it. So Make sure you're checking the announcements on Canvas. And then if you have any questions, I did send you all back your resumes. Great job. I was very specific on every single, it took me like 3 or 4 hours to go through all of them because I want to make sure that I'm helping you have the absolute best resume possible. You need to make those changes. You don't have to make every change I suggested. If you disagree, don't do it. It's your resume. But you do need to make some of the changes, and you need to make it as good as you can, and then send me back the final copy. And then you'll see in the assignment, also email me a copy. And then I'll give you your final, I'll give you another grade, which helps pad your grade a lot. And then now you have your resume. And if you're applying for a job over this next 5 months, take that resume, list me as a reference. You know, resumes are a little bit fluid, right? So there's no two have to be the same. They have to fit you a little bit. But I do know what looks right and what doesn't look right on a resume. And that's what I'm trying to help you with. Okay. All right. Everyone good? Okay. Those of you there in my next class will probably start about 3 minutes after. Have a great